During his last couple of years with the Baltimore Ravens, Nick Sobotka has been surrounded by talent, but this year things are different. The Ravens have had an up and down season, and Nick has been doing his best to carry the team as the offense and defense are both inconsistent. Today, we'll be finishing out the season and seeing if Nick can prove that he is truly the greatest cornerback in NFL history by carrying this team to a second straight Super Bowl. Nick has put up stellar stats this season so far, but his interception numbers aren't quite on pace to match last year's record-shattering season. He's determined to finish strong, and he got off to a great start against the Browns as he picked off Deshaun Watson and turned on the Jets to take it all the way to the house for a big pick six. Offense was balling out in this game, and Nick continued to play lockdown coverage and deliver big hits like he had been all season. The Browns were trying to put together a drive to get them back in the game late in the fourth quarter, but Nick baited up the curl route perfectly for a diving interception that sealed this one up. Offense crushed the clock, and Nick and the Ravens were building up positive momentum at just the right time with only a few games in the regular season left. Nick's next game was against the Bengals, who he had dominated throughout his NFL career, and he had a chance to get a pick early in this game but had a rare drop on the deep ball. Cincinnati had a 10-7 lead late in the third quarter, but it was only a matter of time until Marcus Mariota slipped up, and Nick came up with his first pick of the day as he dove in front of the slant route. Unfortunately, offense squandered the excellent field position, and it was looking like the Bengals might just get us this time. Nick and the defense had to stop them at the edge of field goal range as Mariota missed an open receiver to make it fourth down. The Bengals missed the kick, and offense finally got something going to tie up the game. Nick almost made a huge play on the slant route, but he couldn't come down with it. The Bengals were threatening to get into field goal range once again, and another first down could put them in position for a game winner, but Nick was fighting hard in run defense to keep that from happening. On third down, he laid down a hit to stop the run short, and the Bengals made what looked like the game-winning field goal, but offense clutched up after a quiet day, and Nick and the secondary just had to hold it down for a few plays. After Nick came down to stop a Mariota scramble, the Bengals only had one timeout left and decided it was time to just chuck it up. They threw it deep to Nick's man, and like always, he was right on the spot to grab it out of the sky and seal a big comeback win for Baltimore. The Ravens just had the Bengals number, and Nick had another multi-pick day. Next up was a Super Bowl rematch against the Packers, who had reloaded with young players, including a rookie quarterback. Nick was continuing to tackle very well, coming up with big hits and making an impact in run support. He came up with a huge and very obviously late hit that surprisingly did not draw a penalty, and with the quarterback scrambling repeatedly, it was only a matter of time until one of Nick's hits jarred the ball loose. This kill shot on the Packers quarterback finally did it, and the Ravens fell on top of the fumble for a big turnover. Analysts had been trying to figure out for years how Nick appeared to have eyes in the back of his head, and he came up with another big hit here. Despite Nick's stellar play, the Packers were leading by 3 until he stepped in front of a slant route and actually stayed on his feet for once, which led to an easy cakewalk into the end zone to open up the scoring for the Ravens in the second half. With offense struggling, defense was going to need to keep locking up the Packers to win this game, and their quarterback was not learning his lesson about sliding as Nick laid down another wicked hit on him. The Ravens offense got a big 3 points to make it a 7-point lead, and after another big stop from the defense, they were able to run out the rest of the clock as Baltimore continued their win streak. This Ravens team was getting hot at just the right time, and Nick was leading the charge. The Ravens' next game was against the Trevor Lawrence-led Vikings, and Nick opened this one up with an easy pick as he got away with an obvious pass interference to cause another turnover. Nick had started stepping it up after a quiet early season, and his work on his tackling ability had made his game much more well-rounded. The Vikings offense had been tough to stop since that first drive, and they took the lead, but thankfully the Ravens offense was matching them blow for blow today. Nick was doing more than his team's linebackers in run support as he got off the block to track down the quarterback run, and Baltimore was holding on to a 6-point lead in the fourth quarter as he continued to lay down big hits left and right. After a third down stop, the Vikings missed a field goal, and the Ravens offense continued to be solid as they ran out the clock for another win. If Baltimore could win their last 3 games, they would have a chance to get a first-round bye in the playoffs again, and this game against the Jets got off to a great start as Nick's teammate finally picked up the slack with an interception that he took to the bank for 6. The Jets were driving to attempt to answer after the big early play from the Baltimore defense, but on third down, they were stopped short and had to settle for 3. The Ravens offense fired back with 3 of their own, and Nick's teammates continued to come up with interceptions on the other side of the field. Baltimore had taken a commanding lead in what had been a quiet day for Nick, and in one of the weirdest plays of the season, he came down to force a fumble, but Odell Beckham Jr. recovered it to take it in for a Jets touchdown. Baker Mayfield in New York had one last chance to make it a game, but the secondary continued to come up big as Nick's teammates snagged another pick 6 to cap off one more big win at home. With a few games left in the regular season, Nick had caught 14 picks on the year, which was a definite drop off from his numbers last year. It was looking like an MVP award might be out of the question this time around, but he was still leading the charge for Defensive Player of the Year. If Nick wanted to hit 20 picks in the regular season, he'd have to ball out in these last couple of games, and it looked like he was going to do that against the Lions today. After he dove for a pick, he popped up off the ground and turned on the Jets as he continued to show that he was one of the fastest players in the NFL. One thing Nick surprisingly hadn't done in his pro career was break this single game interception record, and today had the feeling of a day where he might just do it. He hadn't gotten more than 2 interceptions in a game all season, and midway through the first quarter, he already had a couple. It was insane that Nick wasn't even on the watch for league MVP because he was so clearly the best player on the field in every game he played. With this interception, he tied the single game interception record, and he got his second pick 6 of the day as he was scoring more than either offense in this game. The floodgates had opened as he was making up for his lower production earlier in the season, and the picks just kept on raining down. Nick was on pace to get more interceptions in this game than he'd ever gotten in college, and he was running these routes for the receivers. He got the most ridiculous catch of his entire career as he dove and reached around to snatch the ball out of a receiver's hands as we continued to abuse that acrobat ability. Nick had already broken the single game NFL interception record, but he wasn't done for the day. He was looking to make the new record absolutely unbeatable, and he barely missed his 7th of the day on this diving attempt after baiting up the deep curl route. The Lions would eventually get on the board as Nick got beat for the first time all day in man coverage, and somehow this game was actually kind of close. The Ravens offense hadn't done anything, but it didn't matter because Nick got targeted again for his 7th pick on the day, as this quarterback was not learning from his mistakes. The Ravens offense was able to kill the clock, and Nick had had the best game in NFL history. Not only did he break the single game pick record, he had crept up to 4th on the all-time leaderboard only 4 seasons into his pro career. Baltimore looked to continue their impressive late season win streak into the playoffs, but there was absolutely no way Nick could top his 7-pick performance from last week today. After a run made at 1st and goal, Nick got taken off the field as always, and the Dolphins were on top going into the second half. Nick once again had a chance to get his first pick of the day, but he barely misplayed it, and Miami was driving again. Nick continued to bait balls up just a little bit too much to get the pick, but here he was able to come up with a diving breakup. The Ravens got the Dolphins to 3rd down on the goal line, but they punched it in for a killer touchdown, and this game was pretty much over with how the Baltimore offense was playing. Nick was flying all over the field in run support to try and make something happen, but he couldn't do everything, and Miami got another one into the end zone to ice this game. That was not the way the Ravens were hoping to end the regular season, and they were headed into the playoffs as the 3 seed. In the first round of the playoffs, Nick was playing in his first NFL snow game against Lamar Jackson and the Patriots, and he was going to do everything he could to put the team on his back once again. He was coming out hitting hard in this game, and in past matchups against Lamar Jackson, he had acted as a quarterback spy from the cornerback position. Nick teed off on him perfectly on a hit that somehow didn't result in a fumble, but the Patriots were able to march down the field, and they punched it in to take the lead in the second quarter. Defense was going to have to come up with some big plays today to stay in the game, and they did just that as Nick's teammate came up with a pick on this ball that stayed in the air forever. Offense finally put a drive together to take the lead, and Nick's teammates continued to ball out in the snow as it seemed like all the hits Nick had landed on Lamar Jackson were getting to him, and his second interception of the day was going to the house. All the Ravens had to do was defend a 2-score lead, but the Patriots were driving fast until Lamar threw the ball to nowhere, and Nick was in the right place at the right time for a sliding interception. That turnover was enough to shut down New England's comeback hopes, and Baltimore was headed to the second round. In round 2 of the playoffs, the Ravens were taking on the Chiefs, and Nick had a chance at a pick on the first drive, but he'd been missing a lot of picks that he normally caught lately. It happened again on the very next play as Kansas City got the ball inside the 10. Nick got taken off the field, and of course the Chiefs put 7 on the board. They were threatening to score again on the next drive, but Nick finally came up with a pick to keep this game close. Offense was struggling, so the Ravens needed to avoid getting down by more than a score in this game or things could get out of hand. Thankfully, they finally put up a touchdown, and with the third quarter winding down, Nick's teammate came up with a huge pick to kill the Chiefs' drive. The Ravens pulled ahead with just over a minute left in the fourth, and Nick snuffed out Kansas City's hopes with another pick to seal this thing up. Mac Jones and the offense killed the clock, and Nick was headed to the 4th AFC Championship game of his career. In the AFC Championship game, Nick was taking on the Colts, who were 15-2 on the year. Getting a win in this game was going to be tough, and the Ravens were trailing going into the second half, but Nick's teammates continued to come up big as a near pick 6 put Baltimore in position to tie up the game. Unfortunately, the extra point was missed, and late in the third quarter, Nick had a chance to catch a big pick, but he barely missed it, and it cost his team a big touchdown. Luckily, offense came up big with 8 points to tie it up, and after the Raven defense got a big 3rd down stop, Mac Jones led another touchdown drive to take the lead. With offense clutching up, Nick had to do his part and make up for his mistakes, and he finally came up with a pick with just over a minute left in the game. Offense went 3 and out, so the Colts got the ball right back, but Nick came up big again as he dove for the clutch game-winning interception. The Ravens came away with an upset win against the number 1 seed, and Nick was headed to his 3rd Super Bowl in just 4 years in the league. Winning this Super Bowl would cement Nick as one of the greatest players in NFL history, and the Falcons offense was helmed by none other than Patrick Mahomes. Atlanta was putting together a methodical first drive, but Nick continued to come up big in big games as he picked off the in route and had all the room he needed to take this one from end zone to end zone to open up the Super Bowl scoring. That was a great way to start out this game, but the Falcons continued to move the ball, and after Nick missed this diving pick attempt, they were right back on the goal line. Mahomes dumped it off to the tight end for an easy 6, and the Falcons Ravens had reclaimed the momentum of the game. Midway through the third quarter, they punched in another one to take the lead, and the Baltimore offense would have to clutch up again to win this game. With 3 minutes left, a huge drop on third down gave Mac Jones a chance to tie it up, and he answered the call as this Super Bowl was going to overtime. It felt like Baltimore was the team of destiny, but things were looking dire as the Falcons' passing attack had been dangerous all day, and they were already threatening to score a season-ending touchdown. With Mahomes at quarterback, they weren't playing conservative, and he had all day on this first down but tried to do too much and threw a terrible pick right into double coverage. Hamilton took the pick back to the 30, and all offense had to do was score. They'd been clutch all throughout the playoffs, and they came through to score the game-winning touchdown. The Ravens had won their second consecutive Super Bowl in a thriller, and Nick had cemented his legacy in Baltimore. Nick Sobotka might be back in the future, but for now, this series is going to be signing off for a little while. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for what's next on the channel.